Hi, Fitzy. Hi, Harper. I'm going to read you a story about the moostache. Does your daddy have a moostache? Here we go. Moose had a problem, a horrible, hairy, prickly problem. It grew right below his nose and just above his upper lip. A moostache. What? Moose was in a frenzy tizzy. The moustache was completely crimping his style. He was a great hoofer, but he could barely hop and hip hop with a moustache going flip flop. He was a wonderful chef, but he simply could not flambe his souffle with all of those whiskers in his way. And he was a daring skier, but how could he downhill race with the mighty moustache blowing in his face? Moose had to do something and soon. But what? Well, after days and days of much serious thought, Moose got an idea. He crossed some hair here, he crossed some hair there, and he tied his moustache around his neck. A moose scarf seemed to be the ideal answer to his problem. It was so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect. But then his moustache got knotted and mangled and horribly tangled. And those hundreds of hairs still prickled and tickled. Worse, Moose could barely take a breath with all that moustache wrapped around his neck. So Moose untied, unwrapped, unknotted, and, gulped some fresh air. He got another idea. He parted some hair this way, he parted some hair that way, and he heaped all the moustache on top of his head. He moustachioed antlers seemed to be the ideal answer to his problem. It was so easy, so simple, so perfectly perfect, until a squadron of squirrels and one very nosy gopher moved right in to the Moose Motel. They huddled and hoarded, furrowed in, borrowed out. Needless to say, became quite crowded up there on Moose's head, and heavy and messy. Yuck. Well, and very, very noisy. The squirrely chitting and chatting and squeals and squawks woke Moose up every morning before the crack of dawn, and that gopher was giving the moose one hairy headache. Moose needed sleep. He needed his rest. He needed his privacy. Moustachioed antlers? Nuts, said Moose. So he unparted, unpiled, untwisted, untwined, and said, adios to those hairy thorns. Oh, no. But now what? What? The miserable moose took hold of a hunk of hair and he wrestled it. Then he roped it and he tethered it and he tied it and tamed it. Aha! A moose tail. Now that was so simple. That was so easy. That was so not so perfectly perfect. Talk about a dizzy do. Moose didn't know if he was coming or going, backward or forward, this way or that. He didn't know which end was up. Moose had to bail on that tail. What a mess. Well, and so he thought and thought and thought some more, but no other idea was a worthy winner. Braids were a bother, a moustache sweater, too sweltering. Net? Not. Poor Moose, his problem was terribly, terribly unbearable. Just downright sad. He felt so alone, he didn't know what else to do. So, he called it fate, called it destiny. It was probably dumb luck, but one day Moose tripped on his moustache and just had no time to duck. Oof! Pardon me, they both said as they bumped. Then they blinked and they stared. and their hearts went thump, thump. She was a moose with a bouffant so bodacious, outrageous. Well, it was just plain old big. Hair after hair piled higher than high, a skyscraping dew of glorious curls, a tower of swirling twists and twirls. She was simply splendid, stupendous, absolutely superb. I think they're in love. Well, of course, Moose had to ask, how did she do what she did to get such a do? Ms. Moose winked and then whispered, just a little glue. So she helped him fearlessly plunge a hoof into a fat pot of the white gooey goop, and carefully, oh so carefully, they glopped and they